True freedom does not disappear suddenly. It fades quietly when questioning stops, when habits replace judgment, when obedience becomes automatic without reflection, and without realizing it, many people stop asking why. The Stoics understood this clearly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that no external force can dominate a person unless the mind first abandons itself. For most of human history, rules were followed out of necessity. Survival demanded structure. Consequences were immediate. But modern life changed the nature of obedience. Today, control rarely arrives through force. It arrives through routine, through comfort, through unexamined habits. The Stoics warned that habits shape character long before beliefs ever do. When habits are left unexamined, the mind slowly becomes passive without realizing it. Most people assume freedom is something granted or denied by external authority. The Stoics rejected this idea entirely. Epictetus taught that freedom begins with the ability to govern one's own judgments. A person who cannot examine what they believe, why they believe it, and how they react is already dependent, even in the absence of visible chains. Consider an airplane on autopilot. At cruising altitude, everything feels smooth. No turbulence, no alarms, no urgency. The system makes small corrections constantly. Quietly, the passengers feel safe. But autopilot only works because someone once programmed the direction. And if no one is paying attention, the plane can drift hundreds of miles off course without anyone noticing, until fuel runs low or the ground appears. The danger is not the system itself, but forgetting who is responsible for the direction. Modern obedience works the same way. Nothing feels wrong, nothing demands resistance, but direction is still being decided. Stoicism does not promote defiance, it promotes clarity. A disciplined mind does not obey blindly, nor does it resist blindly. It pauses, it observes, it chooses deliberately. Marcus Aurelius warned that once a person stops examining commands, opinions, and expectations, he slowly trains himself to live according to the will of others. And once this habit forms, it does not remain limited to a single influence. It spreads. A person accustomed to unexamined compliance does not suddenly become independent when circumstances change. He simply replaces one influence with another. The Stoics never encouraged hostility towards structure. They encouraged discernment. Seneca warned that dependency begins when guidance is confused with surrender. Structure can protect, rules can preserve order, authority can serve a function, but obedience without judgment weakens the soul, because it removes responsibility, and responsibility is the foundation of freedom. The Stoics believed the greatest danger to society is not disorder, but minds that no longer examine themselves. A mind trained only to comply cannot recognize corruption, not because it supports it, but because it no longer knows how to think independently. Epictetus reminded his students that wisdom is rare, and expecting others to think carefully on your behalf is itself a mistake. No system, no institution, no leader can replace personal judgment. When individuals abandon this responsibility, they do not gain security. They gain dependency. Marcus Aurelius wrote that power does not corrupt character, it reveals it. The same is true of obedience. It reveals whether a person has cultivated discernment or merely habit. Stoicism teaches that freedom begins the moment a person accepts full responsibility for their thoughts, their reactions, and their choices. not the responsibility of authority, not of tradition, not of the crowd. A Stoic does not oppose for the sake of opposition. He opposes impulses that weaken him. He follows rules when they are reasonable. He withdraws when judgment is compromised. This is not rebellion, it is discipline. Because a person who governs himself is difficult to control from the outside, and a society of such individuals requires less force, not more. The Stoics never called for louder voices or greater outrage. They called for stronger minds, minds capable of silence, of reflection, of restraint. Because once a person loses the habit of examining himself, no external freedom can restore inner liberty. This is why the Stoics believed the defense of freedom begins privately, in the thoughts we question, in the habits we form, in the reactions we choose. Freedom does not vanish in a moment. It erodes when judgment is abandoned, and it endures where discipline remains alive.